Hello and welcome to this section on intermediate CSS. Let's look at what are the topics we'll cover in this section. Well, after completing section, you will be able to understand of CSS box concept, how to draw boxes with CSS. Then we'll understand how to move those boxes around the pages. Then we'll understand how to float them left, right, and any position that you want. Then we'll understand how to position the elements with CSS. Then what is display in line or block. Then you'll learn how to import Google Fonts onto your web page and how to create a favicon for your site with CSS. Alright, and finally we will build some website layouts with HTML and CSS combined together. So these are the topics that you will learn in this section. Hello and welcome to this section or intermediate CSS. So we have finished introduction to CSS. So let's understand some interesting concepts around CSS. That's basically how do you do a layout of your web page. Till now you have seen how to work with understanding how to write CSS, what are the different rules of CSS, and then how to work with colors, text, and all those things. So there's one important concept in CSS is about laying out your content. And then you will understand some of the concept like how to create boxes, how to do floating of the columns, how to move the boxes around, how to position those boxes one after the other or in line or one after the other. Then you can understand how to play around and create the layouts like header, footer, sidebars. You can move those boxes anywhere you want inside the pages. You'll also understand how to work with importing the Google font, also work with the shortcut icon that you can apply it for your web page. Alright, so we'll learn all these concepts. So let's start creating the folder and understand how to create a box first and what are boxes in HTML pages. So for this I'll create a folder called intermediate CSS, and the first folder we'll create is called as CSS box. Okay, we'll create a couple of examples here and we'll understand how to create a box and what is actually a box in CSS. Okay, so let's draw a box first. That is your first example. Okay, and let's open this folder. So we were in introduction to CSS, say open folder. We'll go to intermediate CSS and we'll select this folder. Okay, and then we'll draw the box here. So for this we will copy the code from previous files. Let's take the select as. We'll go to type. We'll edit this with the brackets, copy paste this. I'm going to close this again and I'm going to paste it for draw box. Okay, so we'll say draw box here. Okay, and we're going to remove all the CSS here and then all the HTML here. I'm going to remove this definition of CSS and let's simply draw a box. So what we're going to do is the body, the text of the color we will say white. Then we will create a box. Okay, how do you create a box, a rectangular box, right? First you will have a background color for it, right? Let's say red. Okay, and you can mention height and the width, that's all. Then whatever is the height and the width, that becomes a box. Okay, so we're gonna see that. So we'll say we want to draw an 100 of 100 box, that's a square box, 100 in width and 100 in height. Okay, let's draw a box now. Let's say box and we just say red box, right? There's nothing I'm doing it here, I'm just trying to show you a box. Then we will play around with this box by moving this box around, putting multiple box together. But first you have to understand how to draw a box. Very simple to draw a box. You just change the background color, then you change the height and the width of the box. Okay, so let's look at the box now. Okay, you can see a simple box here, right? A simple box is drawn with a red color inside it. So now you have understood how to draw a box. Let's add some border to it. Okay, let's go to intermediate CSS, create another example. Let's call this border box. Right, let's open this up. We'll say border. Alright, so I'm going to delete everything. We're going to create some more examples to understand this concept of how to add borders to the box. Okay, so let me show you what are the properties we have. So I'm going to copy paste the properties of a bordering the box. You have border style, border color, border width, border top style, and border bottom style. So before that, I want to show you the border. Okay, so for this, let me use a universal selector, and I'm saying the border style is solid and the border color is red. All right, and I have some h1 and div tags and some text inside it. Right, the universal selector will show you all the different boxes that you can have around the tags. Right, so there's a magical box around every HTML tags. You can see the boxes around each of the elements. So we'll try to play around with these boxes. All right, so I'm gonna cut this out and put it inside. Okay, so let's play around with these boxes now. So for every div that we have written, we'll draw a box. So we can say border style is solid. You can have dashed as well. So let's look at the, so you can see the solid style here. All right, then the border color red. Okay, you can see it's red in color, the border is red in color. Then the border width is, let's say, 4px. Okay, so width of that border is 4px. Okay, then you can say border top style is dashed. Means you can control the top border. You're just saying apply this rule onto the only the top border. And you can say bottom style to be dotted. Right, so you see you have changed the settings of the border as well. Okay, that's what we are trying to understand, and we are all playing around with the boxes. Okay, let's draw two colors of border, blue color and the red color. We say border of 5px, and you can say solid and blue in color. Then you can also have red border or green border, and you can say sun green. Right, so let's apply this blue border and the green border to this borders. Okay, so we have three borders, 1, 2 and 3. That's basically 3 divs. So let's apply the second div as blue in color. The first is red, so we'll say blue border. So you can say it's blue border solid. Right, then you can have green border. Okay, so you can see blue border and the green border, and then this border we have play around with this borders. The only thing that you have to understand is every tag has borders. Okay, and then you have styles to play around with the borders as well. Okay, let's look at the margin between the boxes. Okay, so let's create another file. And we'll say box margin. Let's open this up. Okay, so I'm going to remove all these conditions here. We'll create different boxes and we'll add margin to those boxes. Alright, so I've copy pasted some of the margin properties. Okay, so margin can be used to add spaces between the boxes. So every tag that you see, the div tag is one box. So you can add spaces between the two div tags, that is the two boxes. And the properties that you have is margin, margin top, margin right. So you're going in a clockwise direction, top, right, bottom and left. Okay, like a clock you're going. So you have to think like a clockwise direction, top, right, bottom and left. Okay, so when you define the condition, you can mention top, right, bottom and left like this, or you can mention it only via one parameter. So one parameter, when you say margin is 5px, which means top is 5px, right is 5px, bottom is 5 and left is 5. You can even choose to have all four defined with spaces, right? You're not saying margin top, margin right, margin bottom, but you're basically saying apply the margin for all the different areas, right? Top 5, right 5, bottom 5 and left 5. You can even mention 3 of them. So you're saying top is 5, left and right is 5, that is left and right, and bottom is 5px. All right. So this is how you can play around by adding margins. So let's create some margins here, and then we'll attach it to the div tags that you have created here. Okay. So we'll create a red border, and we'll say border. Okay. So when I say 5px, it is 5px top, right, bottom and left, right? And when I'm saying solid, it's a solid line. You can have dashed line or dotted line, then it's red in color. Okay. And I'm saying margin bottom 25px. So that's basically the margin between the boxes. So I'm pushing some boxes down 25px. So I'm gonna have a blue border, and I'm gonna have a green border. Okay. So I'm gonna say the margin for first one is bottom, I have 25px, and the second one top, I'm pushing it by 25. Okay. And then the left, I'm pushing it by 20. Okay. I'm just trying to add some spaces, top and left, top and left, right? So left I'm adding maybe 50 and top is 25. Okay. And I'm going to change the color. This is green, this is blue. Okay. The first margin example with solid red line. Okay, that's the first thing. So we'll use a class of red border that we draw. Okay, you can see the margin example with solid red line. So red line is not visible, so we have red border. Here we have say colon, then we should be able to see a red border here. Okay. Next is margin example with dashed red line. Okay, how do you draw a dashed red line? So let's look at border first. Okay, you have the border, right, border. Now I will add a style to it, inline style, to say the border style is dashed. Right, you can see the dashed is coming. So how do you do dotted? Same thing, and you can say dotted. Okay, you get the dotted red line, and you can see the space margin that is being adding. Okay, similarly you can have solid blue line, dashed blue line, dotted blue line, solid green color, dashed blue color, and the dotted green line. Okay, so I'm going to copy paste all the other conditions, and you can see all the different margins that we have created. All right, so if you look at the example, the one that I wanted to focus is on the spaces, the margins, right? If you look at the margin onto these 3 boxes, okay, right here 3 boxes, okay, the margin is at the bottom. For the red, the margin is at the bottom, right? That's why you see the space at the bottom. For blue lines, for all the blue borders, right, for all the blue borders, you say the margin top is 25, but left is again 20. That's why you see there's a margin onto the left and the top. Okay, and for the green ones, you say the left is 50, right? So that's why there are more spaces on the left. Okay, and again also onto the bottom and the top, you will definitely have some margins there. So you're adding some margin onto the top, and on the margins onto the red you have bottom margins. For blue boxes you have left margin which is 25, and green you have added 50. So you're moving the box, right? And how's the output? The output looks something like this. Okay, it's look like all the boxes are arranged in a sequence with some spaces in the front, right? That's basically coming up from your margins. If you look at your margins here, that's basically adding up the spaces. Okay, it's not about borders here, but it's about adding the margin. I have added some borders just to show you, to visualize you how is the space. If I remove the borders, you cannot see the spaces. That's why we have added the margin. So margin is not inside, okay, it's outside. Okay, remember that, always remember margins are outside. If you want to see an example of what is the margin looks like, think of like this, right? You have a margin top, you have a margin right, margin bottom, and a margin left. So you're trying to add spaces onto top, means you're adding the spaces on the top and on the right, on the bottom and the left. And if you look at the lines, you're not adding inside, you're adding outside. Okay, that's basically the property of margins. And again, how you can add different ways of margin is all over here. Okay, so next let's look up adding the padding. Padding is inside, the spaces is inside the box, not outside the box. Okay, so I'm going to copy paste the padding. I'm going to add the file here, box padding. Okay, padding exactly similar as like margin. The only difference is padding will add spaces inside the box. So you see the padding is added inside the box. Let's review what we have done. We have removed the margin, we have added padding here. Again, padding top, padding right, bottom and left, and you can say padding all around the box. Then you can basically see the space inside the box. Okay, there is no margin here. If you look at this, there's no margin on the left or bottom or top. That's why it's all the boxes are attached together, because there is no space between the boxes. Padding, you have added the around 4 sides. That's why you see the spaces are around 4 sides. Okay, so understand the difference between adding a padding onto the top, padding onto the left, and padding is all sides. And if you see from this, there is no margin, right? There's no margin. That's why all the boxes are attached together. If you look at the previous example, let's open the previous. The margins, basically what we had is outside the spaces. The spaces outside the boxes. Padding is inside the boxes. Okay, you have the same example of top, right, bottom and the left. Okay, then you can play around with the boxes. There's one more example called box size. Let's open that up. Box size. Okay, you can mention the size of the box, right? We saw how to draw a box with height and the width. You can mention that size with width, height, minimum width and minimum height, and then maximum width and maximum height. So you draw boxes. When you draw boxes, you mention height and width. Then you draw margin. Then you would say this is the minimum width, it has to be there. You cannot go smaller than this. That's the minimum width. And when you say maximum, that's the maximum you can have for the boxes. Okay, let's open this file. Okay, you can see 250 by 250, which means height is 250, width is 250. Okay, and then you have padding. So you see the spaces, there's no space here. You're adding a padding of 10, you see the nice space coming up here. Okay, and then for each boxes you have adding some space. That's why you see some space. That is the margin that you're adding. Okay, and then you can have the flexible boxes, which means this has no limit, so it will grow as you increase it, right? It's increase as it grows because it has no min and max height. Okay, if you have min and max height, you cannot grow bigger than this. Max means maximum you can grow that big. That will be restricted by the CSS, and then you cannot grow bigger than that. Okay, this is all basically playing around with the boxes. You are trying to create a space in the web page, and then you're trying to create some space on top, on the right, on the bottom and the left. You're creating outside with the margin, inside with the padding, and then you're trying to have the width of that box, maximum width, minimum width, height and the width of that box. Okay, so this is the very good example if I want you to try. You have how to draw a box, how to draw borders, how to draw margins, how to draw padding, and then how to define the size of that box. Okay, so do this exercise, understand how these things work, and have some exercises done around it by defining multiple boxes. You may not able to place box one after the other because that's the nature of the box when you don't have other conditions, which we're going to learn in next lectures. But draw as many boxes you like, put some colors in it, try to do some play around with it by attaching two boxes, having some space, having the space inside, so you'll understand how the box works. Because once you understand how the box works and how to move the boxes, you will understand how to create a layout for your web page. Okay, so it's a very important concept. I want you to give a try for understanding how to work with boxes. All right, so that's all for this lecture on creating CSS boxes, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the lecture on floating boxes. Now that we have learned how to create boxes of different size and shape, how to color them, how to add borders on top and bottom, and we have understood what is margin and padding of a box. Now we have understood boxes, let's move the box around in the web page. That's what we're going to learn in this lecture. Okay, so we're going to move the boxes and then we'll see how we can play around with the boxes. Okay, so we can say floating box. In this we're going to create a file, create different examples of floating the boxes. We're also going to create some menus out of it, like horizontal menu and a vertical menu. We'll also float some images. Okay, so we're going to have fun in this exercise by floating the boxes. Okay, so I'm going to add the boilerplate here. So here's a boilerplate. So what we're going to do, we're going to define a box. Let's define a box. Okay, we'll create multiple boxes and then we're going to see what are the properties that you can use to float the boxes, which is called as moving the box. So I'm going to say height is 130 px and width is again 130 px. We're going to have a margin bottom of 10 px. This is a margin, not padding. Margin means having space between the boxes. And we're going to have a margin of right of 10 px. Right, so we have a box. Let's define two colorful boxes. One is blue color box and one is green color box. Okay, the blue color box, we can see the background color. That's how you color the box. You can say blue and you can say green. All right, now you have two boxes. Let's print those boxes and see how the boxes will look like. So we're gonna have like 5 blue boxes, 3 green boxes, so we're gonna have like, say, class. We need to have box and then we're going to have blue boxes, right? So we're going to have 1 2 3 4 5 and then we're going to have the 3 green boxes. Just going to copy paste this. Okay, nothing fancy here. I'm just drawing up boxes here, and boxes are like blue boxes and green boxes. So let's view this page. Okay, so you have like 5 blue boxes and green boxes. Now what I want to do is I want to float the boxes in line, which means side by side. Okay, now you see you have no control on the boxes, right? You cannot move the boxes around. Let's try to move these boxes around. Okay, how can you move these boxes around? Let's do a live preview of this so we know as we are doing it. All right, so let's float the blue boxes one after the other. So for that you have to just add a property called float, and if you say left, you see all the boxes has gone to the left. So if you do the full preview, you see all the boxes has moved to the left. They are floating onto the left side. Okay, they are floating one after the other and on the left side. And if you say green, you say float right, so they float on the right side, right? They are on the left side, they are on the right side, and they are all floating in line, which means they are in the same line. Okay, that's how there's a property called float. Let's understand what is this property called float. Okay, I'll give you a simple definition of it. So float is a property which is used to specify the elements to float left, means you can move those blocks to the left or right, or follow whatever arrangements that you have. So if you say none, they won't follow any floating, they follow the normal standard arrangements of the boxes. You can say left, right, initial and inherit. We have seen left and right, which allows the element to float left or right. Initial value, you can add a custom value which can give to float the element. Inherit means whatever is the parent floating process, like whatever the elements are arranged, it just follow the parent's style. Okay, clear both means it will stop following the boxes. Okay, it just go to the new line and then start from there. All right, so now you have understood how to float the boxes one after the other. Okay, you have learned how to float the boxes one after others. Let's do some more examples of it. Let's put an image and then we try to float it, right, to the left, to the right, to the center, and then we can play around with the image. All right, so for this I'm going to copy paste an image. Let's create one more file. Let's do floating of images. Okay, so we'll remove all these things. We'll remove the boxes. Now let's add some property. The h1 property, we will say text align center, and text decoration we will add underline. Doing some simple styling on the page. Let's do the CSS for image tag. I want to have a margin of right. Okay, and I want to have 20 px. So I'm adding a margin to an image. Okay, you have seen how to add margin to the boxes. You can add margin to any element, and you can see every element has a box. Okay, so you can move the box around, you can add margin, padding, everything to the boxes. Okay, so image also is a box, so you can add some margin to the right. So when you write text, you have some space on the right hand side of the image. Then we will have two properties to float left and float right. Okay, we're just gonna say float left and float right. Right, so let's do our image now. Let's add our image. So we have h1, okay, that's our h1, which is in center, because we have said h1 to align center. We want to add an underline as well. Okay, then we want to have a div tag, and inside div tag we want to have like image tag and a paragraph tag. Okay, src is equal to the doc file, that's the image file, and I want to have a class of float left. Okay, and you can have an alt, you can say German Shepherd. We want to have an height 250 px and width of 250 px. That's the image size. Okay, then we'll add some text here. So we're gonna add some text here, right? So let's look at the image here. So you have an image and you see the space here. That space is coming up from the margin. Okay, you have a margin, right? Okay, and as and when you increase this, let's say you make it to 100, you see the space has been increased. Okay, that's how you add margin to the boxes. Okay, and when you add margin, the text will have some space around the image. If you don't have a margin, then text will flow right after the image, which we don't want it. We want to have some space so readability is easy to understand. Okay, so let's create some more tags. Well, I've copy pasted the same code and I've said float right, and I've added the image to float left, then again one after the other. I want to float them one after the other, so you'll have 3 images. All right, so you look like this. Okay, it doesn't really look like what we want to achieve. We want to have a break somewhere. We need to find a way to break the floating, or else you see how jumbled it is. Okay, we need to find how to break this floating. So let's figure out how to do that. Okay, so I'll show you a CSS rule which I use typically for all my projects, and which is also be commonly used in the community as well, and it is called as clear fix. Clear fix means you see this issue that you have, it's all around the place. You should able to find a way to break those blocks, right? Break those boxes and then start in a new line. For that, this is a very famous CSS that you can find in GitHub as well. It's called as clear fix. Okay, it's a pseudo element. Okay, clear fix of after. So wherever you mention clear fix, what it does, it try to break the sequence of the floating. Okay, so this is how our output looks like. After you apply this, you'll see what will happen. So we're gonna apply class is equal to clear fix. Okay, so you see there's a image has been brought it down because this floating of the boxes did break from that box. Okay, then similarly you can have the clear fixes for rest of the div tags. What you're saying is after this div has been applied, you want to break that box. You don't want to continuously flow in that same hierarchy. You want to start creating a new line item, like a new line, and then start floating the boxes from there. So if you look at now, you see all the boxes is been broken down into each lines. Earlier everything was jumbled up. Okay, after this div tag I have added a clear fix. After this div tag I have added a clear fix. Then now the floating will start with a new line. Okay, so the code here, we haven't covered display yet. Well, visibility hidden is simple to understand. Whatever that is being overflown, it will be hidden. Display block we haven't seen. We will see what is display block. So take this as an example, right? Wherever you have to have a breakage of boxes, use this clear fix. Okay, and this is a code snippet which is very famous hack that many developers use to clear any floating objects after the box. Okay, previously they used to use like this, like content clear both and display table. Then it used to break that box floating and start with a new line. Then they as and when people find out an easier way to do it. Okay, we're gonna discuss about what is display block means, then I can explain you what this code does. But as of now, take it as a granted for CSS rule, a CSS that can be used to break the floating of the objects after the boxes. So let's move on. So we are able to print images, some text, images on the right hand side and left hand side, and we are able to float all the images side by side. Okay, so let's create an horizontal and a vertical menu. Let's do that. So let's create another example. We'll create a horizontal menu. All right, so in this example we'll create a menu. So let's create that menu first. We'll use the unordered list, and then we'll have li to it. We'll say home, then you can have a blog, contact, about. Okay, and if you look at the menu, it's going to look like this, right? So this is going to have a horizontal and a vertical menu. Okay, and then we'll try to remove all these listings by CSS. So let's remove all those listings first. So what we can say is list style type as none. Okay, once you do that, then all the dots are gone. That's the listing has been gone. Okay, and then what you can do is we can add a background to this. So you have a black color background, something like that. So background color, right? So you have a background to it, and we can change the color as well to white. So to change the color, this is a link, right? So we have to change the anchor tag. Now we can say lia. So inside, only applicable to anchor tag inside the li tags, and color is white. Okay, so it looks nice now. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna float them to the left side. So how you can do it, you can li so we float them to the left. Okay, but we are unable to see it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna say overflow hidden. Okay, so it brings back the view. So whatever is overflow, we just cut it off and then bring back to the view. So by adding overflow hidden, we're able to see the menu here. We'll add some space as well. Okay, and this space can be done with the anchor tag. We can add some padding. So padding is inside the box. We have some space. So padding of 14px and 16px. Okay, let's add some padding here. Okay, so you see the padding has been added, and then we're gonna say text decoration. You have seen underline, right? We remove the underline now. So text decoration is none, so the line is gone. Okay, now you have a nice menu here. So because we still have padding, we cannot see that padding. What we can do is we can add some inline block to it. We can create a block here. So we have a block here because we added padding. We have a block here, but we cannot see it. So there's a property using, say, display block. We're going to use that. And so display is a property which controls the behavior of displaying the element on the page. If you say display none, let's say display none, you add it to UL, you say display none, then that element is not visible, right? You can control the display of that element via this display property. Okay, so you can remove this, not required. Okay, you can have display block or display inline. Display block will show the block and inline will show the block inline. Okay, so let's add one more property called display. It's called as inline block. Okay, it's already inline, but once you add inline block, then the block is completely visible here. Okay, you're displaying the whole block, right? And the block is completely visible, so you can see the padding as well, right? If you increase the padding, this will go up, but you don't want to have too much of padding, then the menu bar will become very big. Okay, so this is very simple to add horizontal menu. Let's convert into a vertical menu and then play around with it. So I'm going to copy paste this and I'm going to call it vertical menu. Okay, let's open that up. So I'm going to delete this. I'm going to remove all these things. Okay, all right. So what we can do is we can remove overflow hidden. Instead of that, we can provide width. So once you have the width, then it cannot overflow, right? Now let's play around with the anchor tag. We'll say I want to display it as a block, not inline block, like each cube boxes. Then color is white. Okay, so you can see white in color. Then we can add in the padding here. Same 8px or 16px. Then text decoration is none. The underline will be gone. Okay, so you have the sidebar menu. Okay, you can have the sidebar menu, which is nothing but the vertical menu. You can also have the horizontal menu. So you see, it's so easy to create menus with CSS, and the main magic is happening from display. You can display it as a block, you can display it inline. Okay, and then you can add the padding, width and everything, just the normal way that we have learned about handling, how to handle the boxes. All right, so that's all the examples on creating the floating boxes, how to float the boxes, right? And how to float the images and the text around the box, and then how to create horizontal menu and the vertical menu. Okay, so that's all this example, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the lecture on positioning the boxes. Now that you have learned how to create the box, how to move around the boxes, how to place them in line. The third thing that you have to learn is how to position the boxes. Okay, so let's create one example and understand what is positions means. Position means how do you define your boxes onto the page. You have the full control of where you want to place it, and once you place it, do you want to move it or you don't want to move it, or you want to make it fixed, and how is the alignment like? Is it the alignment with the parent or without the parent? So that's what we're going to learn in positioning the boxes. So let's do the first example. So we say position fixed. Okay, so let's open this up. That's the boilerplate code. So that's the position example. All right, so let's try to create the positioning first. So for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an announcement. Okay, what I want to do is logically what I want to do is I want to have an announcement. An announcement on the top, right? Like saying get this 10% off, right? And then I also want to have an announcement on the bottom. Okay, I want to have these two announcements on top and the bottom. Bottom is I want to have a fixed element at end of the page, means it is fixed. Even when you move through the page, these announcements are visible. Okay, and then I want to show some lorem ipsum so that I can move around the page up and down. All right, so I'll copy and paste the code here. That's the plain HTML. Okay, and what we're learning is how to positioning this announcement on top and bottom, fixing those position on top and bottom. If you see here now, right, you have your text, and I want to have this two announcements, one on top and one on bottom. Okay, so let's do the CSS and understand how it can be done. Okay, the first thing is we will have body and HTML and say we want the width to be 100, height to be 100%. Okay, so that's the fixed height, right? Then for each paragraph we want to have a margin of 0 auto, so it comes to the center, and maximum width that you can have for paragraph is 600 px. Okay, so it can go floating all around the width, and margin on top I want to have a 40 px. So there's a margin on top, I'm adding some margin there, and I also wanna add the line height so that it's readable is easier, right? You have a line height, right? So next I will change the font, so I can apply that to body. I can say font family is Georgia Sheriff. Okay, and H1, this one I want to make it center. Okay, so I will say text align center. Okay, so this align center. Okay, this is just the normal formatting I'm doing. Now I want to get this on top and this one on the fixed somewhere on here in the bottom. Okay, so let's define this top and bottom. Then we'll have bottom as well. Okay, for the top, get this 10% off. That's nothing but your utility bar on the top. So what I want to do is I want to have a background color for it, and I want to say red in color. So you have red in color, and color I want to have it white, so it's visible onto the red, right? Then I want to have an padding of 20 px, so it looks little bigger right? And text align, I want to make it center. Okay, so text is aligned center, and I want to add a opacity so that it's little transparent, right? Little transparent. When you have the text floating around, I'll show you, it will be transparent. Then position, right? This is the element that we want to learn, right? Position, you can define where you want it. So position, I want one of the properties fixed, means it will always be on top. You see, it's floating on top and the opacity is already available. Okay, we'll move the bottom down, so this will cover the whole area. Okay, so we'll say the position is fixed because starting from here the position is fixed. Now you can change the position by saying left. Okay, you can say left is 0 px, bottom is 0 px. You don't have to add px, just say bottom left, and then you can say right is 0, right? So it went down. Okay, so from bottom we say top, right? So it will go to top. Okay, so top we have added 0, left is 0 and right is 0, so it went up. All we can do is we can copy paste this. Okay, and the only thing to bring that thing down, right, to bring that announcement down, instead of top you can say bottom. Okay, so it will go down bottom, right? So simple to play around. The magic is coming from the positioning. When the position is fixed, you can decide from, let's move this down. You can decide, like, from top you want 10, right? It's coming down. You see, it's coming down. If I say, and you can see this, so we can type and see how it is behaving. 30, 60, 90. Okay, it's coming down. So when you say position as fixed, you are putting the box somewhere onto the page and you're deciding how you want to position this, right? You want to position from 50. So you see, it is from top, you have some like 90 px space, then 50 px you are adding some space, and you're starting it the position of this box from here. When you remove those things, it sits on the top. When you add the bottom 0, means bottom there's no space, then start floating from the bottom. Okay, so that's how you play around with position fixed. And if you scroll, you see the position is not moving, and you have the opacity, nice opacity, so that you can read the text behind it. Okay, you can see the position is not moving because your position is fixed, right? So here you have to say margin, then this will be in center, right in center. Okay, so you have added a nice announcement on top and also on the bottom, okay, with a simple CSS, right? Let's look at one more example of positioning absolute. Okay, so let's open this file. For this we will delete all the conditions here, and then we'll try to understand what is position absolute means. Okay, so I'm going to create a container, then I'm create a box. Okay, this is like a parent and child relationship, how the box will relate itself with the parent. Okay, for anything that you write, the parent is HTML starting point. You create a container, I will make container as a parent. So I'm going to see what I'm going to do here. So you can add the background. This time we'll see in RGBA. You can say 0, 0, 4 just to play around with it. Height is 250 px. I'm just trying to have a box. Width is 250 px. I'm adding a margin left 300 px, just some margin from the top as well, 150 px. So this create a box. I'll create one more box, and I'll say height is 150px, a smaller box. Width is 150px, and this background color I will put some hexa code decimal for it. Okay, then from top I'm adding 50px, from left I'm adding 50px, then positioning, right, this time I'm saying absolute. Okay, that's the key, that's what we are learning of position. And then we'll create a container. Okay, and we'll say this is container, and then we will have a div class is equal to box, and we'll call it as a box. Okay, so what is the purpose of positioning being absolute? So look at the example. So if you look at the example, there are two boxes. So let's do container, we say color white. Okay, so you have your container, you have your box. Understand this concept, very important, because this will help you to draw boxes better, draw the elements on the page better. So you have drawn two boxes. So let's understand how this thing works. So you have a container, and inside that you have a box. But if you look at the output, they are actually two different boxes, have no relation between it. But if you look at the HTML code, they're actually parent and child. Okay, what you have done is you have removed the child, and then you have made it absolute, means you have removed the relationship between child and the parent, and then this child basically following the absolute of the HTML page, means it is starting 50-50 from here, from the top, from 0, 50 here, 50 here, right? If I remove position as absolute, if I delete this, right, the box go back to its parent. Okay, and the box basically following the container, because that's how the relationship and you have written in the HTML. The box is a child of a parent, right? But you want to break this relationship. You want to say box is not a parent for a container. You want to move this box outside, and you want this HTML page to be its parent. So what you will do is you will put an absolute here. So for this box, the HTML starting point becomes the parent. Okay, you have broken the relationship between this. And once you say absolute, means the parent is nothing but the HTML. So go back to the great grandparent, that is the HTML margins. Start from 0, 0 here, and then add top 50 and left 50 here. Okay, if you remove this, always your parent child will be attached together. Okay, so what you're doing is you're breaking the relationship. That's nothing but position of absolute. And if you have to have a relative, means you want to put this box inside and then play around inside this box, there's one more property called as relative. So let's look into that. Okay, so what we can do is we can copy paste this code. We can say position relative, and we can open that file. Okay, and you can view it here, close it, have a new preview out of it. Okay, and all you have to do is you have to say relative, right? If you don't say relative, then the floating will not happen. There's no floating, you cannot control the box. But you want to control the box, you say relative. Once you say relative, this becomes the immediate parent is the container. That's how you have defined it here, right? So that's how it start moving itself, right? The box is moving top 50 and left 50. The position it is trying to take from the container. Okay, if you say absolute, the position is taken up from the HTML, right? That's the starting of the tag. But you don't want to do that. You want to say, okay, I want to follow the relative, means I want to follow my parent. So the parent for this box is container. So based on this relativity of this container, it's trying to move from the container. So making container as a parent, it is saying, okay, I want top 50 from my parent and left 50 from my parent, and it is relative to this position. Okay, absolute means it has no relationship with the parent, it breaks out of that whole box and start floating up from the starting. Fixed means you can completely take out of the whole flow of the boxes and you can place anywhere onto the page. Okay, so these are the three properties. One is position fixed, position absolute, and position relative. Okay, so that's all the example on the three positioning of the boxes, and I'll see you in the next one.